Welcome back to SportsLine, everybody. Of course, along with the NFL Draft, another huge event going on sports-wise in our city. Of course, tonight is Game 7 between the Predators and the Anaheim Ducks. From Anaheim, it starts in less than an hour. Top of the hour, a little after the top of the hour, as the Predators look to advance to the second round of the Western Conference playoffs. And here to break it down for us is our good buddy from Penalty Box Radio, Justin Bradford. And folks, few people in this city know more about hockey than my man JB. Justin, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing fine. Nerves are just on edge, as is normal for anyone that's getting ready to watch a Game 7.
I was just about to ask. I mean, there's something about a Game 7, right? Even if you're not playing in it, you get the butterflies in your stomach, you get a little nervous. I mean, this is a huge, huge deal, obviously, for the Nashville Predators and their loyal fans.
It absolutely is, and it's with any sport that has a best-of-7 series, to where you have teams that have battled so hard, split that series 3-3, and it's a winner-take-all in one game, where everything matters in that one game, to where there isn't a tomorrow for one team. And so that's why it's just always exciting. It's the most exciting type of thing in sports to experience a Game 7. Even like you said, if you're not a fan of one of those teams, it's always the players are always going to step it up another notch. The fans in the building are going to step it up another notch, and especially for the Nashville Predators, this being the first time in franchise history for them to participate in a Game 7. Everyone is on edge. Everyone's ready to just erupt in excitement. But it's one of those things that got to get through that game first and see how the team comes out and performs.
All right, let's go back to Game 6, Justin. A great effort by the Predators. I thought a really gritty, gutty effort. I think a lot of people had written this team off after winning the first 2 games, losing the next 3. They come up with a great effort, as we said. Pecorine was great in goal, and they gutted it out. And what kind of confidence do you think that gives them going into Game 7?
I think it's absolutely huge, because now they can play a little more of a loose style, and this team is very streaky, as we've seen throughout the entire season. They'll win 2, 3, 4 in a row, then they'll lose 2 or 3 in a row sometimes. But the most important part in Game 6, and it was kind of funny, because before Mattias Ekholm scored that goal to open the scoring, we've seen him do this so many times. And I was sitting next to Jeremy Kagover of the National Predators Radio Network and Chris Martell on the forecheck, and sitting right between them. And you see Mattias Ekholm going from the blue line and driving it around the net, and what I like to call from Apollo 13, like a slingshotting around the moon, like the slingshot around the back of the net. And he gets right into the slot, and he shoots and he scores with traffic there, and he's done that multiple times in the season. And I said to them, as it's starting to happen, is when Mattias Ekholm gets low, good things happen, and half a second later he scores the goal. And that right there was so important, because the Predators, especially in front of their home crowd, had to score first. They had to score first to get the fans behind them, to get that place roaring. And anyone that was here at Bridgestone Arena or that was watching on TV could absolutely sense that and see exactly what happened when that goal was scored. And you saw the Predators absolutely pile on more shots right after that as well. So a lot more opportunities came just because they scored that goal, and that momentum shift that they felt. Even if the momentum necessarily doesn't exist to some people's eyes, the team's eyes it does, because it gives them that boost of energy they need.
Our good buddy Justin Bradford of Penalty Box Radio. You can follow him at Justin Bradford. He's a very entertaining follow on Twitter. I can attest to that. Joining us here on SportsLine ahead of the Predators and Ducks Game 7 in Anaheim. The puck drops just after 9 o'clock. All right, Justin, Craig Smith also returned to the lineup in Game 6. And, when you talk to the players about what he adds or what is missing when he's not there, obviously his speed, and his speed allows him to create opportunities not only for himself but for his teammates as well. What kind of impact do you think Craig Smith's return in Game 6 had for the Preds?
I think one of the biggest impacts was it evened out the lines, because what we saw when he went out, and it was very early when he went out with his injury, is that the lines kind of get jumbled, and you have these lines that have been together for so many weeks, and chemistry is being formed, and then you have to start double shifting players and throwing different players into that second line winger role. And especially because it was so early in the game, that the adjustment had to be made ongoing throughout the game. Next game, settled down a little bit, but getting him back evens out those lines with what you want of those 2 top scoring lines that defenses have to prepare for. Then a third line that has some offensive upside, and a fourth line that can grit it out and have some energy. When you didn't have him in there, you didn't have that. You had to bump a player up from the third or fourth line into a top 6 role, and it's just not going to be successful. So having him back evens everything out, has that speed where people prepare for it, and it gives a winger on each side that a defense has to prepare for.
Justin Bradford joining us here on SportsLine. Take me back to the 3 games that the Ducks were able to win back to back to back. What were they doing right? What were the Penguins? Sorry, Pittsburgh flashback. What were the Predators doing wrong in those 3 games that allowed them to go from a 2-0 lead to a 3-2 deficit?
And just speaking just with some of the other media cohorts around here, we all kind of agreed that they reverted back to the Predators that we saw in November and December, where they were doing maybe 90-95% of the things right in the game, but that 5% that they weren't doing right, the Ducks were taking advantage of that. And that's what we saw, is that the Ducks were creating their own bounces. There are some really weird goals that the Ducks scored in that series, and the Predators.
Yeah, I mean, pucks going off a dude's skates and over Pekka's head and stuff like that. You're right, it was crazy. There were some weird goals scored.
It absolutely was, and that's the thing, too, that good teams create their own puck luck. I mean, everybody's like, oh, well, they just have the puck luck tonight. Well, good teams create puck luck. They create good opportunities. And when they're doing the things right, like driving to the net, getting traffic in front of that, like we saw in Game 6, this Predators team can be successful. So in terms of what we've been seeing today from all the media reporting out in California, is that they are very loose right now. They're playing like they feel great, and that's what you want out of this team, because it means they can go in with that game plan that they know how to win. They weren't doing that in those 3 games that they lost, so they didn't go into the game plan. It felt like there's too much stress on them. There's too much pressure having that series lead, and then going back to Anaheim and losing that game as well in Game 5. So I think coming out and playing their game that they know they can play, getting traffic to the net, getting good shots, and picking up garbage goals from the rebounds from that third line like Mike Fisher, Victor Arvidsson, Colin Wilson, that's the key for them to get the series victory.
Justin, when you look at tonight's game, and we'll get into some of the keys of the game a little bit later on, but it seems to me all the pressure is on Anaheim, right? The Preds are playing with house money. It's their first ever Game 7. I do believe it is a legacy game for guys like Shea Weber and Pekka Rinne, but that being said, the Anaheim Ducks are a team that has had a history of losing Game 7s in playoff series on home ice. I believe the pressure is on Anaheim. What say you?
It absolutely is. In the past 3 years in a row, they have lost a Game 7 on home ice to Detroit, Chicago, and L.A. That's a lot of pressure we put on that team. And as soon as Game 6 ended, in the post-game press conference with head coach Bruce Boudreau, he was asked that question already about the pressure and how they deal with this, and how they deal with a Game 7 and another Game 7 on home ice, starting to steal a series victory when they weren't able to in Game 6. And he made the excuses of, well, it's a different team, it's a different year, da-da-da-da-da, new players. Well, that's the same problem every year that they've had, is new players, same team, da-da-da-da-da.
Right.
But it's still that thing that sits on them, and the players are being asked about that constantly. They're constantly being asked about, well, Game 7, the pressure's on, there's pressure on them. That's why I think the Predators are so loose right now, because they know the media's all talking about Anaheim continuing to lose Game 7s on home ice. The pressure is absolutely on them to win this game, and hopefully in the first period, Nashville can take advantage of that pressure.
Absolutely. We're talking with Justin Bradford of Penalty Box Radio. I mentioned earlier that to me, it's a legacy goal for guys like Pekka Rinne and Shea Weber, guys that have never really been in this deep of water before in the playoffs. Do you feel like this is a legacy game for those guys? Can they define themselves not only here in Nashville but across the NHL just by winning this Game 7 on the road and moving on to the second round?
It absolutely can be, and especially because you look at the playoff success for the Nashville Predators hasn't really been there, especially in Weber and Rinne's time. They've made it to the second round twice, but they haven't had deep runs, and that's what the national media likes to pick on, is they just haven't had deep runs of success and getting to a conference final or Stanley Cup final. They've only had round 2 twice, and they got whooped both round 2s.
Right.
So I think especially for Weber and Rinne to continue their legacy, where making a potential Hall of Fame career for Shea Weber, you have to win deciding games that people will remember. And a lot of the eyes in the hockey world are going to be on this Game 7 tonight to see how the Ducks respond to it, but to see if Nashville can battle back after having a 2-0 series lead, losing 3 in a row, and then winning it to force a Game 7. It absolutely is a legacy game for them that can help define their careers, because I do believe if the Predators can get out of the series, they can make an actual deep run, and nothing against San Jose.
Right.
It's one of those things that it builds momentum for this team. They know what style of hockey they need to play. They could make a deep run to the conference final, even the Stanley Cup final.
All right, we got a half hour till game time, Justin. We'll get you out of here on this. It seems to be one of the keys for this game for Nashville. You know, it's easy to say. We always talk about it, but you got to stay out of the box tonight, don't you? I mean, you look at Anaheim's special teams, best power play in the league regular season, best penalty kill in the league regular season. The last game that was at Anaheim, you know, the Predators took, I believe, 7 penalties, and even though Anaheim only cashed in on 1 power play, you can't spend the majority of a Game 7 killing penalties all night, can you?
You cannot, and you do not want to test a powerful power play like what Anaheim has when you have gifted players like Ryan Getzlaf, Corey Perry. Corey Perry has yet to score, but he has 4 assists, and Ryan Kessler, and some of these those talented players. Anaheim, you don't test it because when you play with fire, you're going to get burnt. And that's what you saw in Game 6. Both teams played a fairly clean game. Granted, the officials let them play a lot, but only 2 penalties taken by Nashville. Obviously, Anaheim scored on 1 near the end of the second period, which the Predators, luckily in the third period, responded very well to. But it's one of those things you have to stay out of the box, and you have to have players that are supposed to be leaders in the team, like Mike Ribeiro, not take stupid penalties at really key times in a game. That's what's going to be important, is keeping their wits about them, not taking stupid penalties. If a penalty is taken to prevent an obvious goal, okay, that's a different story, but you've got to play smart with your stick. And anything that's a stick penalty, whether it's hooking or tripping, anything like that, they've got to play a lot smarter than that. They cannot take penalties that involve the stick, because that means it's a lazy play, they're behind the play, and there's other ways to prevent a player from scoring.
All right, Justin, get your plugs in. How can people follow you and keep up with you?
Absolutely. Well, I'm at Justin V. Bradford on Twitter, penaltyboxradio.com, and just have to say the Mighty Drunks, my rec league hockey team, playing for the championship Stanley Keg at Ford Ice Center on Sunday night.
Tap the keg, my man. Good luck to you, and we look forward to talking with you, hopefully, as the Predators continue their march to the Stanley Cup. Thanks so much for being on tonight, man.
Excellent. Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
All right, that is the great Justin Bradford, good friend of the show from Penalty Box Radio, breaking down Predators and Ducks Game 7. Puck drops in just over a half an hour, folks. We'll come back, and we're going to get you set for this weekend's big marathon, and we've got some great representatives in studio to talk all about it, and we'll get to that right after this. Stay with us.